Investigators. My name is Jessica Davies. I'm an investigative journalist. My job is to investigate crimes, crime scenes, and potential suspects and show you how to do the same thing. If you haven't subscribed and my analytics show me that 50% of you guys have not subscribed to the channel, please subscribe. And hit the notification bell. I do have a new Richard Allen video coming out tomorrow at 5 p.m. So be on the lookout for that. Welcome to Reporter Room. Please come on in. Come on in. Tell me where you're from.
This is Reporter Room with Jessica Davies.
Okay, so we have so much stuff to get into. I have so many packages ready. I don't know if I'm going to be able to get to them all. I prepared 8 packages. I might have overdone it just a little bit, but we're going to be talking about Snapchat Snap Map. And was BK using this to track victims? Is this why law enforcement pulled the warrant? I'm going to show you a little bit about how Snap Map works. Try saying that 3 times fast. Snap Map. So I'm going to share with you also about a Snapchat monitoring tool that would allow someone to look at what people are doing, to look at what you guys are doing, even when you're in ghost mode. I'm going to share some information about that. We're going to talk about the fact that I'm going to prove to you that BK premeditated doing a crime like this early in 2022. The real reason BK switched his cell phone to AT&T, the role of geofencing and cell phone pings. And we're going to talk about one of the only statements that BK's family has put out on his behalf. We have a lot of stuff to get into. So, what does Snapchat collect? Well, Snapchat collects a ton of your information. Let me back this up. Okay. You're not going to believe all of the information that Snapchat collects on you guys. So I'm going to say hello to chat in just a second. Come on in. Come on in. So what does Snapchat say? Snapchat collects a ton of information about you, much more than you probably realize. And I'm going to show you Snap Map and how BK used this to track victims. If you take a look at the Snapchat privacy policies, everything is spelled out for you. I am going to be talking about this case in terms of Bryan Kohberger because he's the only one who's been arrested, indicted, and who is sitting in jail without bond. He is presumed innocent until proven guilty. He has not had his day in court yet. So all of the information that you provide to Snapchat, your name, your birthday, your username, your email address, your phone number, they save and store all of this information. And one of the most interesting things about Snapchat in relation to BK is Snap Map. So is this why law enforcement got a warrant for the Snapchat? So let me just show you a little bit about that. Let me grab this really quick. Take this down. And grab this instead. Okay, can you guys see this okay? Nope, you cannot. Let me add it in. All right, let me share this one instead. There it is. Okay, so my source on this is the New York Post, and I am going to say hello to chat in just a second. Go ahead and tell me where you're from, guys. So this judge sealed dozens of warrants for over 60 companies in the Bryan Kohberger case. So dozens of companies, including banks and law enforcement organizations, were served with warrants in the University of Idaho crimes. I'm watching my words, but their contents have been sealed by the judge. Now, this is to protect BK. I've seen a lot of people say that that they're hiding things from us. They're not. They're protecting his right to a fair trial. So the warrants were handed down to more than 60 different companies, including AT&T. We're going to talk about AT&T in just a moment. Bank of America, Apple, PayPal, Reddit, Snapchat, and they're on under seal. This is according to Fox News. So, but my source on this is the New York Post. The warrants contain highly intimate facts or statements that would be highly objectionable to a reasonable person. The court also noted that the documents contain facts or statements that might threaten the safety of who? Or among others, served the warrants is the Moscow Police Department Forensic Lab and the K-Bar knives. This was revealed. We talked about this before. We knew that police were looking for a Rambo-style knife, such as the K-Bar. We know that's what was ordered on Amazon in the spring of 2022. We know that a brown knife sheath, which was K-Bar USMC, United States Marine Corps logo, that's like a 7-inch blade, was found underneath and to the side of Maddie. So this is just, I just wanted to show you proof that there were warrants that were put out on this. And we're going to be delving into the Snapchat snap map in just a second. Let me say hello to chat. So glad you guys are here. Tell me where you're from. Glitters and hello. Great to see you guys. So happy you guys are here. Come on in, come on in. Please give us a thumbs up on your way in. We have so much stuff to dig into. We have so much stuff to dig into. Tell me what you guys are thinking about all of this. And we'll get started on everything. You guys know I like to get started right away. I do want to acknowledge chat though, because this is a live stream and it isn't interactive. So if you want to ask me questions, this is a great place to do it. If you see people with the check marks, red, green, and blue, those are our channel members. So great to see you guys. Come on in. We're going to have a great chat. We have great people in the chat tonight. Oh my gosh, this is going to be so good. I am so glad to see you guys. Tell me where you're from. If you want to join the top chat, you just need to be subscribed for a few minutes. By the time this isn't confirmed as true, what isn't? I haven't talked about anything yet. I haven't shared anything yet. I'm so glad to see you guys. Okay, so Chris thinks BK acted alone, maybe took pictures of trophies to show off to incel group, but it's possible, but not my opinion. Yeah, that could be, Chris. Could be. Oh my gosh, we have people all the way here from Belgium and Tennessee. We have from far and wide. I'm glad you guys are here. Come on in, come on in. Massachusetts is in the house. All right. So all opinions are welcome. We just ask that you keep it classy in the chat. So what kind of information does Snapchat? And a lot of people are saying, yeah, but you can't collect my information if I have it on ghost mode. Oh, you can. They can track your information even if you're in ghost mode. I'm going to show you how in just a second. But so SnapMat allows friends to track your exact location. Did you guys know this? Every time you open up the app, look at this. Every time you open up the app, your little face and where you are pops up for your friends on Snapchat unless you have your ghost mode enabled. So you might want to think about this if you have kids using this app. So law enforcement got a warrant for SnapMat map. I'm going to struggle with that all night. So they'll tell you the locations of you and your friends in real time. So was BK using this to track Maddie, Xana, Kaylee, Ethan, or the roommates, Bethany and Dylan? Was he tracking them, because as I shared with you last week, I believe that the fact that somebody called out, there's someone here. I thought it was Xana when she went out to take her DoorDash back out to the kitchen and she saw that the patio door was left open. She would have felt the cold air coming in because it was chilly that night. And she would have realized that someone's here. Did he hear somebody say that? And did that cause him to chase Xana back into her room where Ethan was, do what he did there? I'm watching my words. And is this why he ignored the roommates? Because were they going to be targets? Was he going to go after Dylan or Bethany? And thankfully they had, we know at least Dylan locked their doors. When SnapMat is open, it can display both you and your friends' locations. So was BK tracking the 4 victims on Snapchat? I shared with you a couple of weeks ago, this was according to the New York Post, that he was following the victims around town. So the other app that lets you follow and figure out where people are is the Strava app. And we did a big live stream on that. I'm going to tie that in just a second. So the only way to prevent your friends from seeing your location is if you select ghost mode, but that can be overcome as well with a very simple app. Let me just grab this for you guys. Okay. All right. So this is the independent. Let me make myself a little bit smaller here. Oh, that didn't go well. Nope. There. Okay. You guys should be able to see that pretty well. All right. So this is the independent. That's my source on this. So we know, I just wanted to show you that indeed warrants were served for Strava, which is what we talked about last week and the week before a little bit, and what we're talking about this week, which is Snapchat. This is according to documents obtained by the insider. Okay. So those are my sources on that. And the detective said that there was probable cause that the accounts contained information relating to the November 2022 crimes. I'm watching my words. They wanted BK's user profile, the profile name, usernames, messages, photos, search history, and anyone he followed or unfollowed on the platforms. This is according to documents seen by the insider. Now, this is per ABC News. Search warrants have also been issued for BK on his internet activity, cell phone records. So they're going to tie all of this together with the jury to show his movements, to show how he was following the victims. Law enforcement also wanted to examine the 4 victims' social media accounts. This is according to ABC News. So we know this is a capital punishment case. And in January, People magazine reported that BK was following 3 of the victims on Instagram. And we know this from Steve and Christy Goncalves also. She said that he was following both Maddie and Kaylee, and that with Maddie, he was liking all of her photographs. So investigators told the magazine that the victims did not follow BK back and that the messages had gone on unanswered, and they may not have even seen them. This is really common. I think a lot of people don't, check their DMs. I don't read them either, because they're usually a foreign prince trapped in a foreign country or a scam, more than likely. We know BK has a history of medication and psychological issues. We know this from family and friends. And in that Tapatalk account, he talked about depression, dissociation, and being able to do, quote, whatever I want with little remorse. And this is according to the New York Times. So I'm sharing my sourcing with you guys so you can see where am I getting all of this information from. So let's talk about this for just a second. My sound is coming in and going out. Well, that's going to be a connection issue, but it should be okay. I only see one person telling me that. Hey, Truth Exposed. So come on in, guys. So let's talk about this SnapMat and how would he have overcome SnapMat and the ghost mode? So let's say the victims were using the ghost mode to protect their location. Well, all he would have to do would be to use a monitoring tool called mSpy. So if you want to uncover and track someone's Snapchat location, even when ghost mode is on, mSpy works. And this app keeps tabs on the whereabouts of loved ones or victims in this case with remarkable accuracy, pinpointing the device within a 10-meter range. So even if you're close, Snapchat, Snap Map will show the last location you were in while you were using Snapchat. So if you close the app, it's still going to show whoever's spying on you where you were when you last used Snapchat. The app account is made with a device that has a unique number, and most of the time people use their cell phone numbers for this, right? So it could be. So let's think about this in terms of BK and the AT&T. We know he switched his phone service around this time, and I'm going to show you why in just a second. I'm going to show you this was pre-planned in just a second. So the prosecution requested information from BK's digital footprints from multiple apps, including Strava, which we already went through, and Snapchat. This is according to the documents by the insider. And I just shared with you the New York Post information. And Strava, you can follow people on Strava. So not only does Strava work like a GPS and would help law enforcement track BK on Strava, but Strava also works to follow other people that you are friends with. So was he doing this to stalk one of the victims? I'm going to talk to you about how BK premeditated this, and and proof that he was planning to do this. I'm going to talk to you about the AT&T and geofencing cell phone and his family statements in just a second. Let me check in with chat. Bring me your questions, guys. We have so much stuff to get into on this. I'm looking for questions. I see comments. Oh, here we go. Here's Bob. Bob says, my first time back after being put in the corner. Keep me in your prayers. Oh, dear. Catherine said he was very nearly right. If not for the sheath and the DNA, he might have gotten away with it. And Chris says nobody puts Bob in the corner. I love that. Okay, please remember to share and subscribe. Oh yeah, I always forget to do that. Yeah, please subscribe if you haven't already. And thank you to our producers, George Brown, Jane J, Sasha Angel. Well, let me pull this down for a second. Okay. Sorry about that. Before I share the channel members. Okay, and our channel members. All right, so thank you to our mods, channel members, and to all of our subscribers. Okay, so let's talk about BK premeditating doing a crime like this back in 2022. All right, so let me grab this, and I want to talk to you a little bit about Snapchat. Let me see. I'm just grabbing this real quick. So what kind of data does Snapchat collect? I just want to show you guys the receipts on that. So you guys know this is from reviews.org is my source on this. So Snapchat has a 248 million users worldwide at the time of this article coming out. While most everyone sends messages over Snapchat taking pictures, many wonder what this giant app actually collects. Because what you send on Snapchat, you think it deletes and it goes away. And it does and it doesn't. But it does save a lot of data, that people don't know. So what kind of information? Tech companies like Snapchat like to point out that they won't share your name or personal information with advertisers, but they can share everything else about you and build a profile of your product preferences and other data. So They say they collect your data in order to improve their services and create a better marketing strategy, and personalize your experience. So, is there a way to delete your data from Snapchat? Unfortunately, the only way is to really delete your account. So that's the only way to keep your info. Is there other way to keep your information private? Well, they're going to talk to you about ghost mode, but as you can see here in the article, um, you can run a VPN on your phone too. It'll protect your privacy, but it's not going to protect you if they're using the app that I just shared with you. So I just wanted to show you guys that so you could just see um, kind of what the receipts were on that. So this is how it pops up on Snap Mat. This is what it map. That's what it looks like. So were they using? Is this why law enforcement wanted to get BK's the search warrant to get his? And let's talk about premeditation. So according to the affidavit, BK switched his cellular service to AT&T in June of 2022. We also know that BK ordered the K-bar knife from Amazon in the spring of 2022. And in fact, BK changed his cell phone provider and joined AT&T right after he graduated from DeSales University. So he had gotten his master's degree. He changed his cell phone provider after he finished his master's degree in psychology and cloud-based forensics. He knew at this point he was going to Pullman, Washington, and we've always wondered, did he go to Pullman, Washington because he was fixated on someone, or did he become fixated on someone after he got to Pullman, Washington? And again, he's still innocent until proven guilty. He hasn't had his day in court. So I believe that BK changed cell phone providers after learning about cloud-based forensics. And you will recall that I brought this up to you in one of our most recent live streams, the fact that he applied for this job with the Pullman Police Department to teach law enforcement. Now, we know in August of 2022 that BK began creeping around and peeping around the 1122 King Road house. In fact, his cell phone was pinging in the wee hours of the morning, 11 of the 12 times. Additionally, his cell phone pinged at the house on November 13th at around 9 a.m. in the morning. So in November of 2022, BK was applying for this job. Think about that. He was applying for this job with the Pullman PD. And at the same time, he's creeping around the 1122 King Road house, allegedly. So I'm curious to know if you guys think he failed his psychological testing with the Pullman Police Department, if he had a bad job interview, or if they were able to pull up his record, which showed that he had stolen his sister's cell phone when he was 19 years old. What do you guys think? Put a 1 in the chat if you think that he failed the psychological test. Put a 2 in the chat if you think that it was because of his criminal record. And put a 3 in the chat if you think that it was just he had a bad interview. So it's kind of creepy that he was stalking the house in August of 2022 and in November of 2022, and that he wants to teach criminology, specifically technology, to catch criminals to law enforcement, and applies for this job with the Pullman Police Department. So let's talk about BK's switch to AT&T, and I'm going to tie that up in a bow for you. Let me grab that really quick. We do need this. Okay. You guys see that okay? You should be able to. Yeah. Okay. So we're going to be talking about all of that in just a second. Let me check in with chat really quick, and then we're going to dive into this, and I'm going to show you why this was premeditated. I'm just looking for I'm just scrolling down really quick looking for welcome Cirrus Black to the Reporter Room channel family. So happy to have you. Okay. If you want to become a channel member, the join button is next to the subscribe. Truth Exposed says the title of that video you asked for, and oh, that's something else. Please don't come into my chat though, guys, and promote other content creators. I'll remove you permanently for that. Just FYI. How many times do you think he sat behind the house watching them? Well, we know that the phone pinged 12 times leading up to the crimes. So at least 12 times. Creative says your search history will always be there. That's right. It sure will. Your location data too. Hi, Mindful Art Life. My first live leverage. Oh, thank you so much. I'm glad you're here today. Welcome. I'm glad you're here. All right, let me scroll down and get some of your comments on this. What do you guys think about this? Bob says he's glad he still has a flip phone. I love you, Bob. You're great. Thanks, Njaz. Brother Mike says I have AT&T. Well, it's actually good for privacy. I'm going to show you that in just a second. So Gar 1964 says I bet his sisters have horror stories about living with him. I don't know. I am going to share with you a statement though that was made by his family. One of the few statements that we have in just a second. So please stay with me. What proof do we have that BK used Snapchat? Did I miss something? I just showed you all of the information. I just showed you the fact that there were warrants pulled for this. So we have 1, 1, 1, 2, 1, 1, 1. Mindful Art says probably all 3, plus the medication issue. Pam says 2. Thanks, Cravid's Music. Chris Hart says she doesn't think he was giving a psych eval. You don't think that for a police job they give a psych eval? Oh, I do. I don't. Somebody said that they would have gotten his DNA on that last time, and I just want to say that. Have you ever had to give DNA for a job before? They might get your fingerprints, but they don't get your DNA for jobs. Just not yet. Maybe it will be in the future, but not right now. Got a 1, 2, 3, 3, 3. Chris says he used SnapMat. Exactly. We're going to talk about that. Truth Exposed says all of the above. They probably looked at his record and thought he was weird. And Jazz says, I think a lot of people who met him thought he was a bit off. Yes, we've heard that. It's been a reoccurring theme in all of this, hasn't it? Hi, Mike. Truth Exposed says, cops won't usually hire anyone with a past medication problem, especially the one that he was on. So you think they were able to know that? Maybe that was part of his arrest record. I don't know. Cravid says it would make sense given his phone pinging that many times. Hey, Holly. Okay, thanks, Truth Exposed. Appreciate you. Hey, Girl Friday. Truth Exposed says Cirrus wanted to see Steve's texts. This happened. Oh, okay. Holly says it's a big unintended misunderstanding. That's fine. Chris says BK was not that far along in the interview process to ask BK to take a psych exam. Yes, law enforcement gives an exam to everybody hiring. Yeah, I would think that would be one of the first things you would do is to rule somebody in or out based on their psych history. Broman says surveillance 12 pings to identify each of the rooms they sleep in and when everybody goes to sleep. 12 pings to identify. Yeah, so you're thinking that he was there 12 times to figure out where everybody was. And I had somebody else say that he had never been in the house, and I saw that in the comment section this week. He wouldn't have had to have been, although I think it's possible he could have been there. We saw parties where the police were called out, where basically the roommates weren't even home and there were people in the house. It was a party house. But this house was on multiple realtor sites, including Zillow. Yeah, his record would have easily been found by law enforcement. I agree with that. Ganjao says, good point. Catherine says he lived in a small community. It would have been known to law enforcement once he was admitted. Well, he was in Pullman. He was in Albrightsville, Pennsylvania. He was in Pennsylvania at that time. He wasn't in Washington. So I don't know. Maybe you could be right. Tara, hey, Tara says, I keep having commercials pop up in the middle of the video. Starts over again. Not sure. I don't know. I don't do the commercial thing because I show videos to you guys, so I can't have my live stream being interrupted. Bob Williams says it was a Kohberger issue that got me banished to the outer realm. Oh, okay. Jeanette says 2. Mike says he was in rehab more than once too. And Jazz says she's glad you're here. BK went into HVAC and was at the King Road house. The map was on the HVAC site. The blueprint, I found it fast within a minute. Thanks for that, Chris. All right, so let's continue on with this. Because after this, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 other packages to share with you. There's like so much, but this let's unpack this. Okay, so this is my source on this is the Idaho Statesman. You guys know I love to use local sources because they a lot of times will have inroads into law enforcement, right? Have reporters that have been working on the beat with these local police officers for a period of time. So a lot of times they'll know people to call. So according to the Idaho Statement Analysis, so dozens of new released search warrants, and I just showed you the receipts on that. If you came in late, you can back up the chat a little bit to catch up. Based on the Idaho Statement Analysis and hundreds of pages of redacted warrants and warrant returns, as well as the Latah County prosecutor case filings to keep them all under seal. And this, again, is to protect Bryan Kohberger. It's to protect his right to a fair trial. Some of the biggest companies in social media, shopping, banking, and telecommunications. So, for those of you saying, well, what proof do we have that the warrants were pulled? Well, filings include Google, Apple, Walmart, Amazon, and Meta, that's Facebook and Instagram, the parent company of Facebook and Instagram, detailing the path police took in piecing together the 4 victims' whereabouts and learning more about BK. Watching my words here. So, detailing the path the police took to piece together the victims' whereabouts. Remember, I told you guys that the New York Post had said that BK was following them around town, not the 12 cell phone pings, was literally following them. So this is why I wanted to get into Snap Map, because this would have been a good way to track someone. And I think it's just one of several apps that he would have used on this. So, and I already showed you receipts that they got a warrant for Snapchat. There's a reason. Okay. So police expanded their hunt with legal demands for phone and area cell phone data and a trove of records. Moscow PD forensic detective Lawrence Mowry. I showed you that. I showed you his request not last week, but the week before in our live stream. So investigators, and we're going to talk about AT&T and BK's family statements in just a second, so please stay with me. But investigators began serving search warrants to AT&T. That was BK's cell phone provider. They also got Verizon, Wireless, T-Mobile, and Inland Cellular. You're probably thinking, well, why would they use that? Why would they use that? Well, in my opinion, probably Verizon, either there was a second phone or they got the victim's cell phone carriers. So Verizon, Wireless, T-Mobile, and Inland Cellular. It could have been the victims that were in the house. They also sought history of all the devices that pinged in the towers. So they didn't just focus in. Ann Taylor said, I don't know how my client's name ended up on the lips of law enforcement. Well, they got the data for all of the devices that were pinging in the area, all of the cell phones that were pinging in the area between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m. on November 13th. And I'm going to talk about geofencing in just a second. So now his phone was in airplane mode or switched off at the time of the crimes. This is according to the affidavit, but they received a bulk of data within just a couple of days and began going through all of the GPS coordinates and cell phones and other nearby devices. So for people who are saying they just picked him randomly or his DNA was planted, well, if you were going to plant the DNA, why would you only plant the DNA on the inside of the knife sheath found underneath and to the side of Maddie? Why not smear it all over the house? If you were going to plant it, make it look good. They didn't do that, and I believe it's because the DNA was not planted. How come they just zeroed in on BK? Well, they didn't. They looked at everybody's cell phone that was pinging in that area and started narrowing it down. And then they started looking at Hyundai Elantras and started narrowing it down. They looked at white Hyundai Elantras, who was, you know, they knew from Dylan that it was a younger guy. He was muscular. He was tall, athletic, with bushy eyebrows, but not, but not muscular. So they knew kind of what he looked like. So they knew they were looking for, a younger guy with bushy eyebrows that was athletic, but not muscular. So that gave them a description. They knew they were looking for a Hyundai Elantra that didn't have a front tag. And each of these little things helped them narrow down their search. Law enforcement later would get in a probable cause affidavit. They would get a warrant for BK's arrest, and his cell phone did not use the cell towers during those 2 hours. So there's 2 hours that the phone was either off or in airplane mode. And this is why I think the Strava data and the geofencing data are so important, because even if you have your phone in airplane mode, you can still have a handshake with the router of the phone at the 1122 King Road house. Now, investigators believe that BK had his phone off or in airplane mode. I don't even think, even if he had the phone off, that doesn't bother me that much. If they can show patterns of behavior, if they can show that his phone was pinging at 9 a.m. that morning and 12 times leading up to that, and they could match that with the Strava GPS and prove that he was following victims around town and prove that he was outside the house. And if he was linking into Kaylee's Bluetooth and he was using Snapchat to figure out where the victims were and follow them, spying on them. And for those of you who think, oh, well, he would never do that. Well, he did. He did do it. Think about what he did to the WSU colleague, where he made friends with this woman, tended and befriended her, staged a break-in at her house, installed video cameras at her request. He didn't take anything, so she didn't call the police. So, he's, all installed video cameras, got her Wi-Fi password, and then used the password and her own video cameras that he installed for her. He used these to spy on her. That's some serious peeping. And that is using technology to your advantage. So for people thinking he would never do this, well, he did it. He did it already. So this is according to Officer Brett Payne. He's one of the responding officers, and he also helped write out the affidavit. He said individuals can either leave their cellular telephone in a different location before committing a crime, or turn off their cellular phone prior to going to a location to commit a crime. In this case, I believe that he took it with him because he was trying to avoid cameras getting back. So, national telecommunications expert previously told the Statesman it would be impossible to know whether someone turned off their phone for a period unless they received a call, and records showed it went directly to voicemail. And again, this is why the Strava app, the geofencing, all come into play here. So law enforcement continued to gather information about this this all happened in the first week. And I commend the Moscow PD, because unlike the Boulder PD and the John Benet Ramsey case, Moscow PD knew it was a smaller police department, and they immediately brought in the Idaho State Police and the FBI. So for people who are saying everybody's, corrupt except, BK, you would have to have 3 different law enforcement divisions and all of their investigators. And the FBI came in with 30 agents, 30 plus agents. All these people would have to be on board with framing somebody. No, Occam's razor. It's so law enforcement began immediately during the first week shifting to credit card purchases and financial transaction histories over 3 months for the 4 victims and the 3 individuals whose names were redacted from the records. And I'm sure one of them was Bryan Kohberger. So we know Kaylee, Maddie, and Xana were roommates along with Bethany and Dylan. And I think they went unharmed because I think the call out of there's someone here, as I shared with you in last week's live stream. So police sent search warrants to Bank of America, Umpqua Bank. I hope I'm saying that right. PayPal, Venmo, and the parent company, a point of sale Square, Service Square, and the FBI agent Michael Douglas, a financial specialist with the FBI, helped acquire the data. And the records showed that this is Detective Mowry. Lawrence Mowry also requested, and I showed you guys his warrant last week, requesting external surveillance footage of the Umpqua Bank branch on Washington Street in downtown Moscow, located a half mile from where Kaylee and Maddie were out late at the night of the what happened to them. So they didn't just zoom in on BK. They were looking at everything. This was about 1,000 feet from that food truck, right? The grub truck. So they pulled this bank footage from the Umpqua. I hope I'm saying that correctly. Forgive me if I'm not. To look and see, did anybody follow them? Who was there? They were checking everyone initially. So they narrowed in on BK doing good old-fashioned police work. So a week later, so this is week 2, they sent out search warrants for the victims' financial transactions, including Wells Fargo, American Express, Discover, Washington's Banner Bank, and 3 credit unions. They widened their demand to include 2 more people whose names were redacted, for a total of 9 account holders, including 4 of the victims. So 5 people. And then while serving search warrants for the initial financial transaction histories, they also sent warrants to Apple, Meta, that's the owner of Instagram and Facebook, and Snapchat for 4 of the victims. So we know at least one of the 4 victims had a Snapchat account. So this would have been a very easy way for BK to have tracked and spied on where the victims were. From Snapchat, police obtained, so this is directly from Snapchat, police obtained the data from August 1st through a week after they were done away with. So they went all the way back to August 1st of 2022 until a week after the November 13th of 2022 crimes. So almost to the end of November. From Apple, they got each of the victims' iCloud account information from the same period. From Facebook and Instagram, they received Facebook and Instagram account information from August to November for the 4 victims and 3 other people whose names were redacted. So again, this to me shows that they weren't just focused in on BK initially. They were doing good old-fashioned police work, and they began to narrow it down. Several other search warrants from November to January, including to Apple, Google, AT&T, that's BK's cell phone provider, Verizon, offer no information. They were sealed, so we never got to see what they were asking for on those warrants. And they were sealed to protect BK, to ensure that he had a right to a fair trial. So let's talk about the search weapon. We're going to talk about the K-bar knife and the fact that he ordered this in the spring of 2022. And I'm going to show you proof that this was premeditated in just a second. Let me just check in with chat for a second. This is interactive. If you want to come talk to me, ask me questions, come on and do it. Let me see where we're at. Okay. Create Vid says he lurked behind trees and bushes to follow without being noticed. What I can't understand is why he was preying on them so incessantly. What kind of vendetta would have caused him to do this? Well, I don't know if it was a vendetta, if it was that, he was upset, or if he was just, curious and kind of weird and was just initially just following them. I don't know. Law offices of Andrew D. Meyer says, how can law enforcement base a prosecution on the cell data when the FBI cash report is still not available in the final form now 15 months? Well, I mean, as long as we have it for the trial, we don't have a trial day set. So I think they can look at the Strava information. They can look at and how that works as a GPS tracking device. They can look at the cell phone data. They can look at the Snapchat, which also has Snap Map, which is a tracking device. So I think they have quite a lot of information. Catherine says, if it's true about the WSU student, how scared must she be now to trust colleagues and others? Yeah, I can't imagine what a betrayal that would have been. Brother Mike thinks he was a stalking pervert. And Jazz says, I think BK is a sociopath, in my opinion. Chris says, BK car engine brakes and other car electronics are saved in the data to be retrieved by FBI car mechanics. Accident attorneys ask for this data from cars. Yeah, we don't know if his car had a GPS on it or not, but I showed you why that would be irrelevant last week during when I did the whole video on the Strava app, and the week before too. I dug into that and how Strava works as a GPS device, even if your phone is in airplane mode. So to me, what this is going to be for the jury is this is going to be a pattern of events. It's not just going to be one thing. Just like in the Alex Murdaugh case, it's not just going to be that they used the exercise app that was on Maggie's phone to show stuff. They used that with the Snapchat that Paul sent. Paul solved his own case where you can hear Alex Murdaugh in the background when he claimed he wasn't at the kennels that night. So to me, it's going to be a preponderance of the evidence. It's not just going to be one thing. And that's what I'm trying to show you guys, all of the different evidence that they are going for. And I'm going to talk about the early search for this K-bar knife, driving around at night when you have visual snow. And I think he attributed a lot of stuff to visual snow. Hey, Detra Ed. Detra Ed said, stalking is pitiful. Yep, it sure is. I would think trust would be eroded. I agree with that. And Jazz says that FBI are very clever people. It's amazing what they could do. Chris says visual snow was a teenage psychological stress disorder. Well, we don't know. And I've speculated that one of the reasons he didn't see Dylan is because this peripheral snow could have been, I think he was attributing a lot of things to visual snow. He was having all of the depersonalization issues, right? He was talking about the fact that he felt like a sack of meat and he was viewing other people as sacks of meat. And he was attributing these feelings to having visual snow. But I think it was a lot more than that. I think we had, a budding, person who didn't have emotion, so maybe a sociopath or psychopath. At that age as a child, you wouldn't. And I'm not diagnosing him. I'm not a mental health professional, but I just want to say that the Jewel says I think his obsession was constant. We know he had OCD, so obsessive compulsive disorder. So the fact that he's obsessed with one of the victims, to me, that all fits with the OCD. It all fits together with the profile that we've been building of Bryan Kohberger. And again, he's innocent until proven guilty. Create Vid says he sure does get around well for someone who has visual snow. Cynthia King says, I thought he suffered from it. Detra Ed said he gets pulled over a lot, might have some vision problems. Pedro says, did he ever have a girlfriend? No, not that. No one has come forward to say that they were his girlfriend. We know he had this weird date with a young woman who she said that he was tickling her and she just felt uncomfortable. So she went into the bathroom so he would leave and pretended to throw up. And then he left. And then afterwards he texted her that she had nice birthing hips. And that's the only date that we've heard about so far. Great question. Holly says, hey, Holly, BK seems to be under psychological stress a lot. Yeah, and this would have been a lot of stress for him. Think about what was going on. I showed you last week, I proved to you that he had issues with females as early as high school. He was removed from his high school program. I showed you that last week. I showed you the receipts. He was removed from his high school program because of issues with females. And now here we are at WSU, probably, 10 plus years later, and he's having issues with female students. They are saying that he's grading them differently than the men. So leading up to all of this, I think you're right, Holly. I think he would have been a lot of psychological pressure at this point. And I think that, I think that October 21st email that he was sent where he was failing, right? They told his professor said he was failing, the fact that he was having altercations. Altercations are more than an argument, but less than a physical fight. So it's somewhere in between. It's a very heated argument. So he was having altercations. Hey, Jamwar, there's someone here being shouted throughout the house at 3 a.m. is terrifying. Yeah, and I think that I told you last week, I thought that it was Xana. Um, the Jewel says, I agree. I think he was impulsive and had no control at times. And just think about how OCD works. OCD causes you to be focused on obsessively on things. So why not on people? It could be people also. So let's get back to how law enforcement, because Ann Taylor wants to know, how did law enforcement have my client's name on their lips? Well, Ann Taylor, I hope you're watching because I'm showing you. So in the first week of their investigation, so this is while they're searching for the weapon. So they know they have this knife sheath, right? So they begin trying to figure out who might have bought this K-Bar brand combat style knife with a leather sheath. And this was a 7-inch blade. And I told you last week, I don't think that what happened at 1122 King Road house upstairs with Maddie and Kaylee sounded like what we would think it would sound like, because I think the perpetrator practiced. I think there's places that you can go, the diaphragm with a 7-inch blade that can make someone not have the ability to call out. Because remember, Ethan and Xana didn't call 911 either. It wasn't just the roommates. So the Statesman, this is a local paper that I'm sharing with you, because again, they're going to have insight as to how they're going to have more insights into who to talk to at the Moscow PD. The Statesman was first to report that the police had visited the Moscow hardware stores and other local retailers. That's where they started with the K-Bar knife. So, Ann Taylor, this is how they narrowed it down. They started at local hardware stores, asking about recent sales. Later, they disclosed in the affidavit that the K-Bar brand knife was located next to the side and underneath of Maddie in the bed where she and Kaylee were found. They told us that a single source of DNA was found on the button snap of the sheath, which police later linked first to his father, Michael, and then after they arrested BK, they got a cheek swab. That's the DNA sample that Ann Taylor does not want to talk about. She wants to talk about the IgG DNA. She does not want to talk about the cheek swab that they had to get a court order to. If BK wanted to exonerate himself, then volunteering your DNA would be a great way to do that, in my opinion. So the records included a search warrant for the Coeur d'Alene Police Department's forensics labs that since December 1st have remained under a court seal, including all related documents. So they've kept everything under seal. And again, this is for the protection of BK. So if you want to know, Ann Taylor, how BK's name ended up on the lips of prosecutors, this is how. So police then sent a warrant to the online realtor Amazon for all sales dating to the beginning of the year for the K-Bar knife. Again, they're looking to see who bought the knife. And I showed you guys in a live stream that I did last month. Not only did they get the Amazon, and we know that he bought the knife in the spring of 2022 from Amazon, but they also got receipts of how he would have paid for that. The next week, they served a similar search warrant to Walmart and then to eBay. So this is how they started wide. They started at local hardware stores. Then they got Amazon, then Walmart, then eBay. They started wide, and then they just did good old-fashioned police work to narrow it down. So the number of records from the two retail giants and the online site eBay were unclear because the publicly released documents are all redacted. But a follow-up search warrant was sent to eBay, showed police had particular interest in 13 user accounts, 13 user accounts in 9 states and 1 in Japan. All of these people were sellers, and they sold the K-Bar knife. So they were looking not just of who was buying the knife, but also who was selling. So they started wide and then focused in. So 2 of the user accounts were connected to Washington State, another to Idaho, 1 to Pennsylvania, where BK grew up and was arrested. The records show. So after 2 weeks, so now we've done week 1 and week 2 after the investigation began. This is the Agent Mowry, I showed you his warrant last week, sent K-Bar knives located in Olean, New York, a search warrant for the sale of 6 models of their knife plus the leather sheath. Again, narrowing down the search. Mowry also requested information about 6 companies that distribute the K-Bar products. So again, they started with a wide net and then just zeroed in. Only one of the distributors' names, Blue Ridge Knives in the Southwest Virginia, was left unredacted. So that's the only one we know about. Mowry later sent the wholesaler a search warrant in December about its sales back to the start of last year of this K-Bar knife with specific inquiries about 840 units bought between March and July of 2022. And I told you this knife was ordered from Amazon in 2022. So they cast a wide net and then they zeroed in. So I just want to show you, how do we get from here to BK? So people can say, well, you know, we can't prove it's him. Well, it's not just going to be one thing. It's not just going to be the cell phone tower pings. It's not just going to be the Strava warrant. It's not just going to be the Snapchat maps. It's not just going to be, it's going to be a cumulative. Where he bought the knife, when he bought the knife, and all of these things. It's just a lot of coincidences. So either this is the most unlucky guy ever possible, he's innocent until proven guilty, or not. So, let's go to December 30th. So they arrested BK on December 30th. He was in the kitchen separating his personal trash from his parents' trash. And I told you guys last week that's not recycling. Recycling is separating plastics and papers, separating your trash from your parents' trash, putting it in Ziploc bags, wearing medical grade gloves, which is how they found him when they arrested him, is not recycling. Again, in and of itself, but it's starting to accumulate. The arrest showed that law enforcement took 3 knives and a handgun from his parents' Eastern Pennsylvania house. They also took a dozen items, including bedding with red stains and Walmart sales receipt, but no weapons, according to the seal. This was from the Pullman, Washington apartment. This was not from the Pennsylvania house. Okay, so people have also say in the comment section, that Ann Taylor says that BK did not have any DNA on his car, office, and home. And she did say this, but remember, she said this, and at the time that she's saying this was months ago, she also was saying she didn't have everything. And how she worded it is, we didn't find. She didn't say nobody found. And I've never heard law enforcement say there was or there wasn't. So I'm not saying that there is or that there isn't. I'm just saying we don't know yet. And I'm just taking everything Ann Taylor has shared with us with a pinch of salt at this point, because her standing up in front of the court and telling them at the last hearing, demanding that she wants to see the video that they have before she comes out with an alibi, which that's not the purpose of an alibi. But let me check in with chat, and then we're going to talk about warrants, and then I'm going to talk about AT&T and how this all links back to Bryan. I don't want to ignore the chat. Catherine says, SKs are constantly trolling for victims and the profiles. I believe he would offend again if given the chance. Detra says, maybe that's why he didn't see Dylan. Yeah, the visual snow could be. I could also be that it was dark, that she, just cracked the door open. And I also think he was in a big hurry to get out of there. Chris says, BK was a stalker and a creeper for a decade, in my opinion. Holly believes he has an incel. Law offices thinks law enforcement is grasping at straws if the best thing they have is this newspaper article. Well, that's not everything they have. Feel free to watch my playlist because I've gone through a lot of great information on that. Chris says BK has an intense, you're talking about visual snow during the high stress. I don't know. I don't know if the visual snow played a role or not. That's just a educated guess. Sirius Black says, I get really frustrated with people who have said bad things about Chief Fry and some other officers. Mike says, I have no doubt he was very depressed early in life. I think he became obsessed and wanted to do away with someone by the time he was 18. I don't know. Mike says BK was just a privy creep. Sirius Black says, I have to disagree with you on that. She's talking to Andrew. There is an abundance of evidence against Bryan Kohberger. I agree. Bob says, hilarious that one would think that. Okay. Let's not add each other, guys. Let's just say what you think without, like, I don't want somebody like bullied out of the room. Just be careful with that. I'm not saying that that's what you're doing by adding. I'm not saying that. I just we had something happen a couple of weeks ago where one person was literally like run out of the room by just being added by multiple users, and you could see where you would start to feel ganged up and you wouldn't want to be able to share your views. And I think we do want to keep it open that everybody has different views on this case, and that's okay. We all have to agree on everything? I don't think we do. I don't agree with everybody in the chat. I don't agree with everybody, but I don't think we all have to agree. I think we can have differing opinions and share them respectfully with each other. Lori says, do you think he could have had a camera mounted on one of the trees behind their house? I have not found any evidence of that, Lori. I know people have tried to say that this was like a pay-per-view or something like that. Don't even tell me who said it. I have my guesses as to who I think said it, but I don't want to go there. But this was not a pay-per-view, and I don't think there's going to be a video of him actually doing the crime. So I think that's just I don't even know what to say about that. Cynthia says he still have visual snow. Should that affect driving around in the dark at night? I don't know, because your periphery can be here, but it can also be back here. So I don't really know how it affected him. I mean, he had a driver's license. So Pam says, we public know just enough for the warrants, indictments. We haven't seen nothing yet. Chris thinks that the visual snow would affect his driving. Jewel says they don't see their victims as people. Yeah, and we know that he described himself. We've seen him talk about depersonalization. He described himself, and I'm going to talk about the AT&T warrant in just a second. Mike says they are healing at straws. That's kind of funny. The grand jury voted, but there's enough evidence for the trial, so I bet it's more than straws. All right, well, let's get back to this, because we're going to do this, and then I'm going to talk to you about AT&T, and I'm going to show you why I believe this was premeditated. So dozens of search warrants obtained. Again, they started with a wide net and narrowed in on BK. So now we're going, BK's been arrested, right? And now we're to March 3rd of 2023. This is when Judge Marshall, this judge recused him or herself, issued a gag order, and that prevented law enforcement and prosecutors and defense attorneys from commenting on the case outside of court filings. She said later that month she added attorneys for witnesses and the victims' families from speaking. So it was a really big gag order. Now, this was not put in place to keep you guys from knowing what happened. This was put in place to protect BK's right to a fair trial, because this was a very high-profile case, probably one of the most high-profile that we've seen in our lifetimes. So during the first week of December, police also sent search warrants to Tinder, Reddit, Google, Yahoo, seeking Kaylee Goncalves' account information from each of those companies. And I told you why I thought that, and why I believe that it's why they kept Kaylee's Bluetooth, is because I believe that BK was sitting up in that apartment parking lot where his phone was pinging in the area. I believe he was sitting in that parking lot. The house would have been like a goldfish bowl, but I also think that he would have been able to access her Bluetooth. They wanted her dating profile. So this is interesting that they were looking at Kaylee. Now, we know Kaylee's parents, she had said she thought she had a stalker. So they wanted her dating profile and Reddit data tied to 2 email addresses. So again, they were probably looking at anybody that she had gone on a date with, from Google, Yahoo, and so all her email accounts, dating all the way back to August 1st of 2022. So for people who just say they zeroed right in on him, no, they did not. They started wide and worked in. So at this point in the investigation, they were trying to rule out other people. Police did not seek the same information through warrants about any of the other 3 victims, according to the records. Later in December, with the help of police, Detective in Post Falls, in about 15 minutes from where the Goncalveses lived. This is Mowbray. I showed you his warrant last week, obtained decrypted access to her laptop through a search warrant sent to Extreme Networks. The following week, he also served a warrant to an offshoot of U.S. banks for Goncalves's financial transactions dating to September 1st of 2022. So they went all the way back through Kaylee. So they really did try to see, was he stalking her? And I told you the New York Post reported that he was following the victims around town. So Chief Fry, there's been a lot of brouhaha about him. He's retired. Well, he's retiring. Yes. He's been with the force for 25 years, but he's also retiring so he can run for sheriff. So I just wanted to put that out there too, because the people went with he's retiring and then didn't add anything else to that. So he said that this was targeted, that it was isolated, and there was no ongoing threat to the community. And we know that the Goncalveses went on TV. They talked about how Kaylee was hurt. I'm watching my words. And that based on the severity of what happened to her, they believe that, I'm just going to watch my words here. I'm not going to say it. So after receiving Kaylee's account information from Tinder, law enforcement sent the company a follow-up search warrant for information about 19 accounts that were related from November 13th to December 6th. And at the time, they also sent the dating service a separate search warrant for Maddie Mogan's history from January 1st of 2021 all the way to December 6th of 2022. So again, they were ruling people in and they were ruling people out during this time. On December 6th, I think I shared with you that they did know who the DoorDash delivery guy was. They sent a warrant to DoorDash for all the deliveries to the King Road house dating back to the beginning of 2022. And it was later revealed in the affidavit that we did find out that Xana did receive a DoorDash, that she did get that food. So let me check back in with chat, and then we're going to talk about AT&T. Cell phone data, we're going to talk about that. And how did they narrow this down? We're going to talk about the AT&T search warrant specifically. All right. Let's see. I'm a little behind on chat. Chris says, absolutely correct. We've seen it on OG compared to what the FBI CAS system has and all the internet. Car phone. $0.06 a million here. This, if you guys don't know, this is our head mod. Thank you to all of our mods tonight. This is our head mod, $0.06 Amelia. The prosecution has less than 5% of the evidence still, and we don't have a trial date. So I think that sounds really good. It's a nice headline, but that's just simply not what's happening. I just think there's tons and tons of data to go through, and I'm showing you all of the data that they're having to go through. So it's not just the defense team that has to go through all this. It's the prosecution team going through all of this too. Ann Taylor says she has so much information, 51 terabytes of information, that she doesn't have time to go through with it. So which is it? Is it I don't have time to go through all of the information that the prosecution has turned over, or the prosecution is withholding the information? Because the prosecution has to go through all of this as well. And Scott Reich, who I really like, he runs a channel. He's an attorney. He's a criminal defense attorney called Crime Chat. He said that BK's best chance would have been to rush the prosecution to a speedy trial. He thinks that rushing the prosecution to a speedy trial would have been the best chance, in his opinion, because the prosecution wasn't ready. So he thinks that that was a missed opportunity on the part of the defense team. Cree Music says, we don't know how much the prosecution has in regards to evidence until the trial. No, we won't see everything. But this whole narrative that everybody's hiding everything, it's that there's a gag order in place to protect Bryan Kohberger and his right to a fair trial, to prevent the jury from being any more tainted than they probably already are. Chris says the stress of M's could be absolutely cause his snow to return. BK is a Ted Bundy want to be. Cynthia put a 1 in the chat. Jackson says BK does seem to be emotionless. I think most of us would be an emotional wreck if they were wrongly accused. Yeah, he's always said that he's been saying since he was, doing the XR post that he didn't feel things. Even though he knew his father was a good man, he didn't feel anything toward him. So, depersonalization was going on even then. And Catherine says, excuse my French, law enforcement only has some random articles to base any of their affirmations on. Have you followed this case? If you haven't, there's a gag order and law enforcement has released nothing. Right. We just know about the warrants, and that's what we're going through right now are all the warrants. Shelley says, I think it was a combination of losing his job, being rejected by law enforcement for a job, and possibly being rejected by one or more of the victims. Amelia says, sending you all thoughts and blessings from afar. She's a Kiwi, if you guys don't know, from the other side of the world. Thanks, Amelia. Florence says, I don't think he feels stress. Interesting. Lori wants to know, do you think he could have had a camera mounted on the tree behind his house? I thought I just would address this. Maybe you did. Maybe you posted this after, because I know I'm behind on chat. No, I don't. I've not found anything that says there's a camera behind the house. Hey, French 6290 says sociopaths are created by environmental experience. Psychopaths are born that way. Thanks for that. Enjaz says, yes, he always wanted people to know he was the most intelligent person in the room. Yeah, I've shared with you before, I believe, that he had a superiority complex, even his facial expressions and most of his photos. And then his eyes are kind of darting around. He looks like he feels superior to other people. And his body language, in my opinion. Michelle says, refreshing to hear facts that are not crazy conspiracy. Thanks for that, Michelle. I'm trying to bring you facts that's based on information that's out there, not just speculation. There's some speculation too, but it's based on information that we have access to. Ken says, BK's arrogance will be his undoing. Create Vids Music says, no social skills at all. He didn't even communicate with his professor. So I could only imagine how angry he would get. Thanks, Amelia. Yeah, give me a thumbs up if you can, and consider subscribing to this. We're going to talk about AT&T in just a second. We're going to go through the rest of the warrants first. Hey, Annette, good to see you. Glad you're here. Mike says, Florence, doesn't he feel that he doesn't feel now that he's stressed? He feels something, but he probably likes it. It's like a class he's trying to pass. Holly says, right, why does he just sit in jail prolonging everything if he's innocent? Louise Charles says, looking up borrowing towers from other companies can show your location with a warrant. Thanks for that. All right, so let's continue with the warrants, and then we're going to talk about AT&T, because I believe this shows that this was premeditated. So let me finish going through the warrants with you guys. I'm showing you multiple sources too on all of the different videos that I'm doing. I've shown New York Times, New York Post. I'm using multiple sources, just to Fox News. I'm showing you all of the different sourcing that there is on this case. So you guys have all of the information. So now we're at the end of the December. Okay, so now we're 6 weeks out. And this is from Latah County Prosecutor Bill Thompson. He told the Statesman that they obtained more than 50 search warrants in the case. I've heard now it's over 60, but this would have been early on. This would have been December 28th during his interview. This is Prosecutor Bill Thompson. He looks a lot like Santa Claus, I think. So on March 3rd, Judge Marshall issued a gag order that prevents law enforcement, prosecution, and defense attorneys from commenting on the case outside of the court filings. Later that month, she added attorneys for the witnesses. We know the Goncalves family had a spokesperson, Shannon, that was speaking on their behalf, and victims' families from speaking publicly also, because they would have been privy to information that, again, could impair BK's ability to get a fair trial. So during the first week of December, law enforcement also sent warrants to Tinder, Reddit, Google, Yahoo, seeking Goncalves's, that's Kaylee's, account information from each of the companies. So they were really trying to get that dating profile to find out if this, again, they're trying to rule people in, but they're also trying to rule people out. So let's talk about the cell phone data. That's where we were when we left off. As I told you, we're going to talk about AT&T, so let's dig into that. So on December 23rd, for reasons that we do not know, that remain unclear, Officer Brett Payne obtained a search warrant that he served to AT&T. Now we know AT&T. Now we know it was BK's cell phone provider, but they wanted the location data from midnight of November 12th to midnight of November 14th. So they were trying to see, where was he during this time? Because this AT&T data was for Bryan Kohberger. Payne stated that this warrant was connected to BK's cell phone and selected the time frame. So that's my receipt that BK did have AT&T. Okay. Here's the receipts on that. Receipts is just another way to say proof. The same day, Officer Brett Payne, AT&T provided Officer Brett Payne with the requested information about BK's cell phone location during that 48-hour window, according to an unsealed warrant. The data showed that BK's phone was in the area of his Pullman apartment until 2:42 a.m., then leaving the area 5 minutes later, but not before reporting to the cell phone network again more than 2 hours later. This is according to Officer Brett Payne, per the affidavit. So why was his cell phone off? Where was he from 2:42 a.m. until 4:04 a.m. when we see that car circling and finally parking around 4:04 a.m., doing a little three-point turn? So we know BK's phone resurfaces onto the network of AT&T at 4:48 a.m. The police are claiming in the affidavit, they say that the data showed that it was using cell towers along Idaho 95 south of Moscow, north of Genesee, Idaho, near the community of Blaine. They also tracked the phone's data along with a route. It was a roundabout route back to Pullman around 5:30 a.m. So they believe that he put his phone in airplane mode or switched it off at the time of the crimes. I told you last week that he needed the phone to try to circumvent some of the cameras that he was trying to avoid to get back. And I also told you that he felt safe taking his own car, in my opinion, because he knew he was changing out the tags, not updating the tags, changing out the tags. And he did this just a few days after the crime. So in the affidavit, Officer Brett Payne reports sending, and this is important to the AT&T information I'm going to share with you. This is why we're going through the warrants. Officer Brett Payne reported sending AT&T a separate search warrant on December 23rd for the historical data for BK's cell phone since June 23rd of 2022, when police say the account was opened. The records showed a search warrant for AT&T that since January 6th has remained under seal. So we don't have this, including all the related documents. So all we know is that there was a search warrant for AT&T. The historical data and what was in that affidavit, which is very little. The historical data Officer Brett Payne received about BK's cell phone placed him based on the use of cell towers. And remember, they're going to use the Strava app that he had on his phone. And I showed you the receipts, proof that he did use Strava. They're going to use the Snapchat app. They're going to use all of this to help prove where he was, because the Strava app acts as a GPS location. So it's not just going to be where he was on November 13th during the crimes, because he had his phone in airplane mode but it's going to also be all of the data leading up to and after the crimes also. So this is going to be a circumstantial case. There's not going to be a video of him doing it. So they say that cell phone data placed BK based on the use of the cell towers in the vicinity of the crime scene on or at least 12 days prior to the November, on at least 12 occasions, sorry, not 12 days, 12 occasions prior to the November 13th. And we know that this happened again at 9 a.m. in the morning. I'm just going to finish going through the warrants, and then we're going to get into AT&T. Since then, police in January issued 5 more search warrants, each appearing related to BK, according to the newly filed release. They include seeking records from WSU Registrar Office, which remain under seal without redactions, as well as account information for various lengths of time from BK's Google, email address, Tinder profile. Oh, we know now that he had a Tinder profile, and Yik Yak social media platforms. So I guess what they're going to want to know too is if Kaylee had a Tinder profile, if Maddie had a Kaylee Tinder profile, if BK was he trying to reach out to them there as well, and did he feel rejected? So when the Tinder and Yik Yak search warrants were served in January 2025, this is Mowry, I showed you his warrant last week, also sent Dropbox a legal demand for all information connected to a person whose name is redacted, plus 3 email accounts and 1 phone number, each redacted. The Tinder and Yik Yak search warrants are identical in the request, with the exception of BK's name, which is unredacted. All right, so let me just put this up. All right, let's talk about the AT&T. I know this one is a little bit wonky because I am getting a little bit wonky to go through all of the search warrants. I think this is I think this is super thanksworthy though. I've done a lot of research on all of this. It's a lot of stuff to deep dive into as to why they would have been want. So what I tried to look at was the search warrants, and then why. Why do they want this information? How does it pertain? So BK switched to AT&T prior to moving to Pullman, Washington. And did he do this because he knew AT&T data was harder to triangulate? So all of the digital forensics in the important part of investigating cyber crimes, data breaches, and other crimes, AT&T of the all of the different ones is the hardest to triangulate. So it gives you the most privacy of the cell phone. And let me show you guys the receipts on that. So I believe he switched to AT&T. Let me grab. Because he knew. He switched to them because he knew he was creeping. He knew he was stalking. And I believe that he knew he was going to commit these crimes. This is why he ordered the K-bar knife in the spring of 2022. So AT&T, the process of getting all of the digital forensics would include identification. This would be identifying the target computer or storage device. Collection. This would be identifying the digital evidence. Preservation, maintaining the integrity of the evidence. Analysis, forensic analysis, the collected data to extract relevant information. Documentation, detailed documentation is essential. And reporting, a detailed forensic report would have been generated summarizing all of the information and methodology used. So in the Apple search warrant that was served on October 1st, law enforcement requested detailed account information, including emails and attachments, instant messages, that's going to be the Snapchat, cloud storage, and the documents. And this is my source on this is Newsweek. Now we're going back to the Idaho Statesman for a second. The investigators began serving search warrants to AT&T. So let's talk about geofencing and cell phone pings. So the probable cause affidavit is 18 pages, and it only has enough detail to justify law enforcement to make the arrest. They're not going to tell us everything. So for people that are they don't have enough evidence. We don't know all the evidence. We just know what the warrants are, and that's what I'm bringing you all of the warrants that I can find, and then making use of those to try to figure out why they would have wanted warrants for certain things. So in the affidavit, they used DNA evidence, surveillance footage, vehicle records, and this is how they honed in. They started with a wide net and then honed in on BK. So in the affidavit, the Moscow Police Department state that BK used his cell phone in the coverage area of the 1122 King Road house at least 12 times. So this is why this geofencing and the Strava app will be very, very important coming up in this case. So I believe BK did know that he was going to commit these crimes. I believe it was premeditated, and I'm basing that on the fact that he switched his cell phone provider to AT&T in 2022 around the same time that he bought the K-Bar knife. And I'm going to talk about the statement that BK made to his family and just his family made on his behalf in just a second. So please stay with me. Let me check in with chat. Florence says, can you imagine? Yeah, because you didn't answer someone's DM. No, I cannot. And it's really, really sad. Girl Friday says, I feel like he's a narcissist as well. Well, psychopathy, most people who are narcissists aren't psychopaths. But most people who are psychopaths or sociopaths do have narcissistic traits. They have traits of grandiosity, traits of feeling superior to other people. Detra Ed said he showed signs of depression in his writing. Mindful Art Life says, yes, it was swift and accurate. Trixonic said, I didn't find out I had OCD until last year. And most people who have OCD don't bother anybody. Okay, I just want to clarify that too. But the fact that he did and became obsessed and had obsessive compulsive disorder, I just think it doesn't absolve him. It just makes it, in my opinion, it fits the profile. The fact that he would become obsessed with one of these young women, it just fits the profile. So Trixotic said, I didn't find out I had OCD until last year at 30 years old. On top of the Asperger's, when I finally went to a therapist, I thought that was normal and everyone was like that. Wow. Hey, Annette. Annette says, I can't. Thank you so much, Annette. Bob says, taking the bar doesn't mean going to be one. You're talking about a lawyer? I missed the first part. I'm sorry. Chat is flying by, so I am missing some of the comments. And Jeff says, it must have been terrifying. Hey, Blayton, good to see you. Mike says, I think BK likes witnessing the aftermath, even though he didn't get away with it. I think he's still enjoying this and feels like he lived out his fantasy. Fred says his wife bought a K-bar from Cutco. I hope I'm saying that right. Trixonic said maybe he was undiagnosed. Dan Marsh says a 15-year-old who did away with an elderly couple in California left no DNA. If not for him telling two friends what he did, the police said it would have been the perfect crime. Interesting. Ken says, if the defense can successfully get DNA tossed, would that make other evidence inadmissible? If they got the IgG, that could be why she's working so hard to get the IgG tossed, because she would feel like the rest would become fruit of the poisonous tree. But she's tried 3 times, including to get the grand jury indictment thrown out. She's tried to get the IgG data thrown out. I mean, she's gone to the Supreme Court. She's doing a good job, Ann Taylor is, for her client. She's trying everything, but it's not going to get tossed out. It's just not going to happen. The judge has been clear on that. Lacey Ross says, I wonder what the woman looks like that he had been spying on with the camera. So I was wondering if he has a type, might give an idea as to who he was targeting. Yeah, I don't know. I would not be surprised that she would be called as a witness, because I think, again, the prosecution is going to be showing the jury patterns of behavior, right? They're going to be looking at stalking and patterns of behavior. Tetra ED says he said he was depressed and anxious in his writings. Yes, he did. Mike says BK missed his chance of he wanted to beat the case. He should have done a speedy trial. Yeah, I think Scott Reich was right about that. I think his best bet would have been to just go ahead and do the speedy trial, because obviously the prosecution isn't ready either. And for people who are coming into the chat saying the prosecution's withholding the evidence, no, the prosecution's still going through everything. If the defense team is still going through everything, and she has so much from the prosecution that she says she needs until the summer of 2025 to do it, and even then, Ann Taylor doesn't know if she can be ready. Well, then you can't, then the prosecution is still going through things as well. They have a head start on the defense team, but not that big of a head start. He was arrested on December 30th. He was extradited back without any, he agreed to be extradited back to Idaho. So he went right back there. So it's not like, the prosecution's had like a massive head start. So for the people who come in saying they're withholding evidence, they're giving the evidence. And even Ann Taylor admitted this at the hearing, which I have posted on my feed. I aired the hearing. You can watch it for yourself. Even Ann Taylor admits that this wasn't their fault. The prosecution is saying they've given everything that they have so far, but I still think there's more. That there's tons of data to go through. Sirius Black says, welcome. That's an excellent question. I've never seen her, but great analysis. Yeah, I think so too. Pam says that she thinks he has a type. Denise says, I'm sorry, but I believe it's in there. We're damaged. Oh, yeah, I agree. Yeah, I think that the way you use a 7-inch blade, I just don't think it sounded like what we think it sounded like, because Ethan and Sienna didn't call 911 either. So I don't think it sounded like what we think it sounded like. And I don't know if it was the way sound traveled in that house. And that's why I feel so against the fact, not just for the prosecution, but for the defense team also, that house should have stayed up. And Josh says, if he's innocent, get it done quick. Nick79 says, I think he had 2 knives on him. That's very possible. I think he had to carry the knife sheath. And as I showed you in the live stream I did with Nurse Allison, that knife sheath belt, it would have been very hard to pull that off the belt. But I think once he got his monkey suit on, it would have been hard to get the knife sheath around him. So I think that he carried the knife sheath and removed it and wasn't expecting for the girls to be in the same room and in the same bed together. And I believe that Kaylee fought back. And I think he got lost in the struggle. Girl Friday said, interesting as a specified style of knife. Mike says, yeah, it would have been a gamble, but the speedy trial was his chance. Now the case is probably solid. Chris says, BK was an expert kickboxer. Why would he need 2 knives? Yeah, good question. Sirius Black says, I agree. They could not scream from the injury or from pure fright. Yeah, a lot of people have talked about, Dylan freezing and shows him frozen shock face. She wasn't frozen for 8 hours. I think she just froze because she tells us in the affidavit, or Officer Brett Payne tells us in the affidavit, that she locked the door. And that may have been what saved her. But it could also be the fact that somebody called out, there's someone here, made him realize that somebody could have called 911. And maybe he was going to do away with Dylan and Bethany. I don't know. Maybe he only planned to do away with 1, and 1 turned into 4, and he just wanted to get out of there. We don't know, and we're not going to know until the trial. I think I addressed that one already. Sorry. Catherine says, I heard people comment about that too. It makes sense. Law enforcement had more ground to cover than the defense. If PK were innocent, could they spit out all 51 terabytes? And, he is presumed innocent, but I think, it's disingenuous to say that the prosecution isn't turning over things. I think they're going through things as quickly as they can. And, on the one hand, it's so much that I have to go through. This is what Ann Taylor said, that I needed till the summer of 2025 to go through it. And she says she has, the prosecution says she has 95% of what she's supposed to have. And we don't have a trial date set. But to say that I have so much to go through, it's going to take me till the summer of 2025, and then complain and then try to say that the prosecution isn't turning over everything. Well, don't they have to go through everything also? And they had to rule out all of these other people, all of these other white Hyundai Elantras to get to hone in on BK. So, to me. Oh, and Nick says the theory that she believes, or he, I don't think it's a she, believes that the blade, that if in case a blade broke, he would have had a backup knife. Detra Ed said it's hard to unalive someone via kickboxing. Right. You could knock the wind out of them, though. So maybe that's what she was saying. And Jess says, I guess knives are quicker. Plus, using a knife is personal. Yeah, I think the why we're asking to understand who, and we also need to understand why were certain choices made, why these victims, and if you were going to do away with the victims, why go to their house? Why not if you just had one target, why not do it at the University of Idaho campus? Right? Why make the choice to go to the house? Why in the middle of the night go to the house and not during the daytime? Why were certain choices made? Why a knife instead of what would have been, some other forms? Why were these choices made? I think the knife, because he knew he was going to a house with 5 roommates and he needed people to be quiet quickly. And again, he's innocent until proven guilty. I just want to say that. Girl Friday said, yes, everything is cumulative. Yes, it is. It's not going to just be one thing. And people can point out one thing and throw that away. But I think it's going to be like what we saw in the Alex Murdaugh case, where we're going to have thing after thing after thing. It's going to be cumulative, bit by bit, piece by piece, brick by brick. The prosecution is going to build that. That's why I'm showing you the warrants for the Snapchat and showing how that location data could have easily been used by BK to figure out where the victims were. This would have helped him, like the New York Post reported, he was following the victims around. This would have helped him find out where they were going to be and where they were. So, yeah, I think so. It's all cumulative. The Jewel says BK had an attitude about his own self-vision. I feel like a sack of meat was what he said. His hatred of women, his non-acceptance from his peers, and rejection. And I showed you guys the receipts that he had problems with women, with girls, not even women, back in high school. It was so bad he was removed from the program. I mean, it's a pattern of behavior. It's not just going to be one thing. And if you just want to have one argument about one thing, you can do that. But I think it's disingenuous because I do think it's cumulative, which is why I'm going through the warrants and trying to show you guys everything. It takes me 2 or 3 days to prepare of researching to come up with one of these live streams, you guys. And Detra Ed says the kickboxing would have been noisier. Detra says, I don't think the dude wanted to. Yeah, I think so too. Just disable as quickly as possible. And Jazz agrees. Girl Friday says that sorting the trash, where he was sorting his trash from his parents' trash, he knew they would look in there for his DNA. Right. He had gloves on. The law enforcement said they sat and watched him in the driveway in the middle of the night at his parents' Albrightsville, Pennsylvania home, wearing this medical grade gloves, meticulously cleaning the inside of his Hyundai Elantra. Hey, Envision, welcome. Shelley said there must be more DNA, in my opinion. Holly says BK didn't need to do a lot of things. He did simple. He just wanted to do those things. Lori says 8. She thinks Ann Taylor is just tap dancing. I mean, she has to give a vigorous defense. And I do think she is achieving that. I do. I do feel like she is giving a vigorous defense for him. She took everything, to the Supreme Court, trying to get, the fruit from the poisonous tree tossed out. And they refused to hear the case. And that was after Judge John Judge turned her down 3 times. It would have given him a sense of superiority and power. Yeah, I think so too. Hey, Wayne, how did the perp or perps know the bedroom doors were unlocked? Well, I don't know if he would have. He wouldn't have known that they were unless, the victims were together in the room. I don't know how many people locked their doors. We know that after Dylan saw a strange man in the house, she was startled and she closed her door and locked it. But I don't know. Great question. I don't have an answer to that. Sears Black says, please help Jessica hit the like button and put a comment in the live chat instead of the top chat. Thanks for that. Appreciate it. Girl Friday says, sounds like an alibi based on the scenario that is presented. Yeah, Ann Taylor wants to know if she wants to see the video. Because I told you guys, I thought they had video of BK in the car. I believe that they did. This is why they went for a capital case. I think they can prove that it's not just going to be the Hyundai Elantra with the Linda Lane footage that we've all seen. And if you just want to only argue that, but it's going to be cumulative because we know that they gave 5 different camera footages of that Hyundai Elantra early on to law enforcement at WSU, campus police, and to the Pullman Police Department. So it's going to be cumulative. I don't know if he had a hidey hole, but we do know that they found an ID inside a glove, inside a box of one of the victims at his parents' Albrightsville, Pennsylvania. Lacey Russ says, I don't understand why they are sealing everything to protect BK's fair trial. The truth is the truth. There won't be biased with facts. It's not right to the victims and the families to protect him. Well, he does have a right to be protected. So, I mean, he does. Wayne says, why did Ann Taylor request all evidence be made public? I didn't hear her requesting that. I've never heard her requesting that. I've never heard her say all the evidence should be made public. I wish it would. I mean, I would love it to be. All the journalists would love it to be. Hey, Wicked. Wicked says we can agree to disagree. Yeah, we can. We don't all have to agree. I think it's good to have different opinions in the chat. It helps me to read your comments. It's okay to not. There we have a one. Chris says Idaho seals Florida. It's wide open access during the investigation. Colorado does not release until the sentencing is over. Yeah, every state is different. Hey, Sharon, all the way from Alaska. Wow, that's awesome. Mindful Art Life says something I wondered was that the 1122 camera caught or another camera we're unaware of. There is no proof. I know somebody must have. I don't know where this came from because I've been getting comments in my comment section about it was videotaped. I haven't seen anything that this was videotaped or a pay-per-view or I mean, I've gotten some, I put that, where I put the tunnel nonsense. I'm trying to bring you guys, I am doing some speculation on my channel. I do, but I'm trying to bring it to you based on information from the warrants and from the affidavit. I'm not just telling you guys that, there were tunnels dug under the house when there's no evidence. I'm trying to bring you guys evidence based speculation. Let me put it that way. Detra Ed said he probably should not have been driving. And Taylor did not request all of the evidence to be unsealed, only a few documents. Yeah, that's right. Oh, I know what you're talking about now. Okay, so now I know what you're talking about. Yeah, and Taylor just wanted to cherry pick out having a couple of the documents unsealed that would benefit the defense team, I'm sure. And the prosecution was like, well, if, let's unseal everything or we unseal nothing. But yeah, we don't want to prejudice the jury. Mostly this is to protect BK. And she got a lot of information out to us through her motions, right? That's why everybody's, reporting out that there was no DNA at the office, the house, or the car. And maybe that's true. But Ann Taylor said, we didn't find, she used the word we. So was that her investigators didn't find DNA? And at the time, this was months and months ago, she didn't have everything. She still says she doesn't have everything from the prosecution. So is there no DNA at the crime scene? Or is this just Ann Taylor putting that out right away? Because she knew people would just report that out. I don't know. But anyway, so yeah, she wanted to cherry pick out just the evidence she wanted to have unsealed. Yeah, I remember that now. Sorry, I didn't know what you were asking me about earlier. Breezy F. Frankenstein, he was really young when he wrote those words. Yeah, he was young. He was young. Ashley's thinking she needs to delete hers. I just say don't put Snapchat on with your kids, maybe. Oh, Breezy saying meant to be fair. I didn't know what the last word was. But I got the gist of it. Okay, I'm just scrolling down trying to give. Lacey says, is it true that he had one of the victim's IDs? Yes, it is. Well, I showed you receipts. He had one of the do you want me to pull it up? He had one of the victim's IDs inside a glove, inside a box. I showed you the receipts last week. Let me see. He had an ID card. Okay, let me grab this. Take this down. So this is Yahoo. I can get it. Oh my gosh. Why can't I see it? There it is. Okay. Sorry, I have so many things open. I have too much open. Can you guys see that okay? All right. So the Yahoo's citing the Independent, which is a newspaper out of the UK, and it says an ID linked to the Idaho case was allegedly discovered by investigators during a search of BK's residence, says a report. The suspect was arrested at his family's home. Court documents also say the investigators have him linked to the case with DNA evidence on the knife sheath. The search warrant unsealed earlier this year revealed that police seized IDs from Mr. Kohberger's car but did not specify to who they belonged to. The ID claim was made on News Nation, and that's where the claim came from. All right. So, for those of you going, well, why are you showing journalistic sources? This is a journalistic channel, so of course we're using journalistic choices. So anyway, yeah, that's a great question. And for the, I talked about last week a little bit about this too. I'll get to your question in a second, Wayne. But people say, can we trust journalistic sources? I mean, yeah, we can. I think we can, because they have to vet their information. They have to vet the information. That you can't just say anything that you want to say. You have to vet it out. So, and usually if there's an error, then they'll print a retraction. And I've never seen that retracted. Wayne says, why did law enforcement have search warrants for 14 bank accounts? What does that have to do with BK? Well, as I shared with you, they had a wide net, and they zeroed in. They started wide and zeroed in. So I'm going to assume it was probably the 6 roommates, BK, and maybe a couple of other people that they were trying to rule in or out. They didn't just land on him like some people try to make it sound like. You think the dad was driving with him because of his vision problems? Maybe after a while his condition got worse as he drove. I don't know. That's a great question, Detra. This is why I love reading your comments. It's questions like this. Pam says, has there been any proof of visual snow or just BK's word? I don't know. All I know is what BK reported in the XR posts. Other than that, I haven't seen any proof of it. I don't know if there is any or if there isn't any, because we don't have access to that bank. I don't know what that is. Hey, Michael, welcome. Envision says, I think he did a diversion program for crime, allowing him to avoid a record. So yeah, he got his record expunged. Pam says this case is never ending. I mean, it's a lot. Definitely a lot to go through. Sears Black says law enforcement will investigate their bank accounts for evidence, anything that may seem off or suspicious. Holly says Kaylee's parents and friends all have said she had a stalker. Kaylee was into true crime. Yeah, and that may be why we've got all these other bank accounts pulled too. They would have wanted to rule out if there was somebody else stalking her, if it was related. Who was it? Where were they? Do they have an alibi? All that stuff. Create Vids Music says it's not just a coincidence that no other crimes have occurred since that. Nothing. Do you think he would have kept going, committing crimes if he had not been caught? I don't know. It's hard to say. Usually these guys don't stop unless they're stopped. But I love what Grizzly True Crime said. Gisela said that, she thinks it's interesting. She just noted that it was interesting. She thought it was interesting that no crimes like this had occurred in Moscow, Idaho, or in that vicinity for 8 years leading up to this crime. Nothing like this had occurred, and nothing like this has occurred since. So I agree. I just think it doesn't mean anything in and of itself, but it's interesting. Michael says, hopefully it'll be by summer of 2025, not later. I agree. The Jewel says, I agree. He practiced. His OCD would have pushed this, and whatever other psychopathy was present would have created a perfect storm in his head. Hey, Kami, good to see you. Enja says, I think there is a high chance he would. Yeah, hit the like button, guys. Help me out with the algorithm. Wayne thinks it was a retaliation hit job. Do you think that he was retaliating against the victims because they weren't answering him on social media? Do you think there was, a Tinder request to try to date one of the victims on Tinder? Is that why they were requesting that Tinder app? What do you think about that, Wayne? But law enforcement criminal records checks show everything. Even if records are sealed, the presence of the record would show up. I'm perfectly imperfect. Good to see you. Said they do a psychological evaluation and they also give a polygraph. He probably lied about the medication in his past. That's reason enough not to hire him. BZ says both can be true at the same time. Exactly. I think so too. Great point. I agree. Both can be true. It doesn't have to. We don't want to be black or white thinkers where it's just only this way or only that way. Let's kind of stay in the gray zone. Kami says, I think she's just making excuses. What she's been doing the last year, even with that help, I don't know if she's just making excuses, but I just think it's disingenuous to say I have so much information that I have to go through that I need until the summer of 2025, and then calling out the prosecution because they haven't turned over the last 5% of discovery to her yet, even though we don't even have a trial date set. It's not like they're having to go to trial without this. I just, to me, it's like you can't have it both ways. If it's so much for you to go through, then it's a lot for them to go through also, because they're not the law enforcement officers. They're not the FBI. It's just a little prosecution team in Moscow, Idaho. This isn't some, big dream team or something like that. This is just a little prosecution team. It's just a couple of people with the staff going through all the same information that she has to go through. So I think that, that's what I think about that. To make a short story long, Pam says, I absolutely think he would have continued with crimes. To me, the question is how long in between the attacks. Chris Stark agrees with you, Pam. Detra says, I think he had issues bonding with people. Create Vince Music says, Ann Taylor got the evidence in a pile, basically, so she has teams sorting out all the evidence in categories such as surveillance, photos, documents. Yeah, and she said it's a lot. So if it's a lot for the defense, then isn't it disingenuous to say that the prosecution doesn't have a lot to go through also? And that this could be why Ann Taylor doesn't have the last 5%. If we were going to trial and it wasn't turned over, okay, then I could see, I would be siding with Ann Taylor because they need to have everything. But that's not, we don't even have a trial date set. And she's talking about summer of 2025. So we're nowhere close. So if Ann Taylor has to go through all of this evidence, then so does the prosecution. They also have to go through everything. So they have a little bit of a head start, but not that much of a head start. He was arrested January 30th. In Albrightsville, Pennsylvania. He waived extradition and came straight to Idaho. So they don't have a massive head start on this. Hey, Clouds, Russ, good to see you. I'm perfectly imperfect. Said I'm getting commercials during the live stream as well. Yeah, unless you're paying for premium, they're going to run commercials. Detra says if he can't bond with others, he's likely to become more obsessed. Wade says, did the Linda Lane runner at 422 hear or see anything? We don't know. We don't know because the gag order, nothing's been leaked about it. Nothing's been leaked. Holly believes he became grandiose. The Jewel said psychopaths and sociopaths have very different mental health issues. Florence says he looks like a hawk, even the way he turns his head. If you look at his eyes do look like kind of like bird of prey. Like he's got the lips pursed. And then his eyes are constantly scanning. It does feel almost like a bird of prey. In my opinion, that's just opinion. It's not anything else. Do the phone pings mean he was in the driveway? I don't think he was in the driveway. I think he was sitting up at the apartments where that parking lot is behind the house. There's a public parking lot for the apartments that were next door. I think he was sitting up behind the house in those apartments. It would have given him a nice downward view. And that house, Maddie's room, had the letter M and her little pink boots in the window. It would have given him, a goldfish bowl view into that house when the curtains were open. The Jewel says they sure have seen both in my 15 years of working with mental health issues. Holly thinks predator. Oh, sorry. Create Vidsme says you can tell someone the sky is blue, but they will say it's purple no matter what. Yeah, I think there's some people that no matter what evidence you show them, even if there was a video, and there is not, guys, there's no evidence that BK had a video on the tree. I haven't found anything to back that up. If there was, I would bring it to you. There's no evidence that the crime itself was recorded. If there was evidence of that, I would bring it to you with the receipts from, you know, journalistic sources. This is a journalistic channel. So I think there's some people that no matter what, they're never going to be convinced. And it's, I always wonder, like, what is the psychology of somebody that identifies with a perpetrator like this? Like, what is it in their background that, makes them identify with this guy? Were they a defendant? What makes them identify more with the criminal and kind of forget that, the victims? And again, he's innocent until proven guilty. So, I just want to put that out there with that caveat. Breezy says, we have to stop judging people based on their appearance. I have an eye condition that causes people to feel a certain way about me. Not everyone looks normal. Some of these comments are so sad. Well, I mean, people do body language analysis. So I don't know. I think, you know, his lips don't have anything to do with an eye condition. And they do look like this in a lot of his photos. BK lost his job after December 9th. That happened after the crime. That's right. But he was told in emails leading up to the crimes that on October 21st, the night Buddy the dog disappeared out of his own yard, just a few miles away from the 1122 King Road house, BK was told in an email that he was failing. He knew he was failing. So he knew he was failing. He was having altercations with his professor leading up to the crimes. I'm not saying this was the only thing that motivated him. I just think that it was another reason. Detrad said, hopefully the victims' families get a fair trial. Yeah, what's really sad about, all of the cases is it seems like all of the attention goes on the perpetrators. And, it's easy to forget the victims in this. And I include the roommates in that. Lacey said, I think she shouldn't have taken on this case. I heard she has a few other cases she is dealing with. Well, she's the only one that's capital punishment certified. And Jazz says, everyone is beautiful in their own way. Oh, I like that. Breezy says, no hate. I'm just trying to get everyone to remember that people are different. I agree. That's why we allow all comments in here. I'm not censoring anybody. Everybody's opinions are welcome, and I'm sharing them with you guys. Chris says, I agree. Thank you for sharing, reminding to be kind. Bless your kind heart. Very nice. We have the nicest true crime group community here. If you want to join and become a member of the community, you hit the join button. We have the nicest group. Mindful Art Life says, yes, he was not doing well before the termination for weeks. He wasn't. He had been, reportedly he had been called out for grading female students differently than males. And this pattern of behavior goes all the way back to high school for him. And I'm going to talk about his family statement in just a second. Holly says, no judgmental here, just looking for the accused and Florence's opinion. Catherine says, more than just his appearance, most people react to his vibe. Together with the evidence against him and reports from people who knew him, there is a sinister renaissance. All right, let's move on from this. I think we've Sarah says, what? I think it's his mannerisms that make him seem like that. It's just the way he stares and looks at people. Yeah, and body language is part of how we assess. It's part of how we communicate with each other. It's also part of how we assess other people too, right? So I believe that he got the AT&T phone because he knew it was harder to triangulate. He knew it would have been harder to triangulate. And I believe this and the fact that he purchased the K-bar knife in the spring of 2022 shows that this was premeditated. And I want to talk to you about the statement that BK's family released. This was through his original attorney, Jason Labar. And they said, quote, first and foremost, we care deeply for the 4 families who have lost their precious children. There are no words that can adequately express the sadness we feel. We pray for them day. We pray each day for them. We will continue to let the legal process unfold. And as a family, we love and support our son and brother. We have fully cooperated with law enforcement agencies in an effort to seek the truth and promote his presumption of innocence rather than judge unknown facts and make erroneous assumptions. So that is really all that we haven't really heard much from his parents. That's really all we've heard from them regarding this. Hey, Einstein. Opinion Einstein says, I missed it. Perhaps. Did they ever get other DNA samples back from the labs? We don't know because there's a gag order on it. We don't know. We know that I know a lot of people said, well, there were 3 other male DNAs and they weren't tested. But my pushback on that is that, and I'm not pushing back on this on you, Opinion Einstein. This is just my pushback to comments I've seen in the comment section. My pushback on that is that I'm sure there was other male DNA in the house, but if you know that it's male, then it was tested. So that's my pushback on that. I do believe it was tested. They were trying to rule out everybody. This is why I wanted to go through the warrants with you. I wanted to show you how much was done to help. Why BK and Taylor, if you're watching, how did BK's name end up on law enforcement's lips? They started wide and they narrowed in. They started wide and they narrowed in. So I think I'm going to leave it there. I do have a Delphi video coming out tomorrow. Be on the lookout for that. And if you haven't subscribed, and if you want, I want to just thank our producers, George Brown, Jane J, and Sasha Angel, and our channel members. If you want your name to appear in all of my videos and in the live streams and have a check mark by your name during the chat, you just hit the join button, which is next to the subscribe button, and your name will appear also. I'm going to be putting out another Bryan Kohberger video toward a little bit later this week too, but the next video, at least the next one, is going to be Delphi case because that's ongoing right now. And I'm also put up a notice. I'm going to be streaming the Chad Daybell case. If you want to watch it together as a community, I'm going to be streaming that case. And that's an Idaho capital case. So I think it'll give us a lot of insight into this Bryan Kohberger case. Let me know what you think about all of this in the comment section below. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.